On July 25th, 1978, the world's first test tube baby is born, making headlines across the globe. But why was she called a test tube baby? And how did her birth change the world? Also, what impact has her birth had on Mr. Lewis? Louise Joy Brown, the first ever baby conceived via in vitro fertilization, or IVF, was born in Manchester, England, to Lesley and John Brown. Little Louise weighed 5 pounds, 12 ounces. Her birth marked a breakthrough in medical treatment for infertility. The words in vitro literally mean in glass in Latin. In science and medicine, the phrase refers to biological experiments or procedures performed outside of a living organism, such as in a test tube, petri dish, or laboratory flask. Thus the term test tube baby. In vitro is the opposite of in vivo, which means within the living. The Browns' IVF team, led by British gynecologist Patrick Steptoe, Cambridge University scientist Robert Edwards, and nurse and embryologist Jean Purdy, had begun their pioneering collaboration a decade earlier. Once the media learned of the pregnancy, the Browns faced intense public scrutiny, with some raising legal, ethical, and religious questions. Today, however, IVF is considered a mainstream medical treatment for infertility. Fittingly, Louise Brown's middle name, Joy, was given because of the joy her birth gave not only to the Browns, but also because of the expected joy and hope her birth would bring to couples around the globe who were struggling with infertility. Since Louise Brown's birth in 1978, 17 million babies have been born worldwide through the procedure. In fact, one IVF baby is born every 35 seconds, accounting for approximately 1 in 36 births globally. And those numbers are expected to rise exponentially in the coming years. The Browns had a second daughter through IVF named Natalie in 1982. In 1999, Natalie became the first known IVF baby to give birth to a child of her own. Her baby was conceived naturally, putting to rest concerns that IVF babies would be destined to have fertility issues of their own. Natalie's big sister Louise, the original test tube baby, also conceived naturally and gave birth to a child in 2006. It's impossible for me to talk about this story without it becoming personal, as 3 of my 4 children were born thanks to this medical miracle. It is also impossible to adequately express the pain, frustration, hopelessness, and ultimately joy Mrs. Lewis and I experienced during our journey with infertility. When we visited Cambridge, England in 2025, we made sure to track down the location where Robert Edwards did much of his pioneering infertility work. It was something of a pilgrimage for us because of the impact IVF has had on our lives. Robert Edwards was awarded the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2010 for his work on IVF. Patrick Steptoe and Jean Purdy were not eligible for consideration since both passed away in the 1980s, and the Nobel Prize is not given posthumously. If you'd like to learn more about the groundbreaking work that led to Louise Brown's birth, I recommend the appropriately titled 2024 film Joy, which stars Bill Nye as Patrick Steptoe, James Norton as Robert Edwards, and Thomasin McKenzie as Jean Purdy. The movie is available on Netflix. If you're anything like I am, you'll need to have the Kleenex ready. Here are other events that happened today in history. In AD 315, the Arch of Constantine officially opens in Rome to honor the emperor's triumph over Maxentius. In 1832 in Massachusetts, the first recorded railroad accident in U.S. history occurs, killing one person. In 1898, during the Spanish-American War, U.S. forces launch an invasion of the island of Puerto Rico. In 1943, Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini is voted from power by his Grand Council and arrested. In 1956, in heavy Atlantic fog, the Stockholm crashes into the Italian liner Andrea Doria, causing her sinking. In 1980, AC/DC releases Back in Black, the group's first album since the tragic death of singer Bon Scott. In 2009, Harry Patch, the last known surviving soldier from the trenches of World War I, dies at age 111. And now it's time for our Today in History quiz. Which U.S. president signed the order ending racial segregation in the U.S. military? Harry S. Truman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, or Lyndon B. Johnson? Liked learning about the first IVF baby? Then you'll love this one about another medical breakthrough of the 20th century, the treatment of diabetes with insulin. Tap the screen to keep the story going on Today in History.